The heads of judiciaries, court presidents and delegates of the G20 group of nations are all gathering in Sandton from today to discuss matters relating to the pillars of justice and an evolving global landscape. The gathering comes ahead of the G20 leaders meeting, which is set to take place in November. Let's take you there live to Newzroom Afrika's senior politics reporter, Ziyanda Ngcobo. Ziyanda, Chief Justice Mandisa Maya has now given the keynote address there. And, as part of the coverage of this event, one of the top lines I've seen is about judges around the world scrambling to Trump-proof their judiciaries. Was that part of the Chief Justice's address today at all?
Yes, it did. I mean, she touched on a lot of issues, Michelle. She dealt with innovation and how, technologies such as artificial intelligence have a potential to reduce the load of the work of the judges and lawyers. But at the same time, there are other risks such as, an example of a lawyer submitting papers that had cited two cases that simply don't exist. So that's on the innovation side. A lot of what Chief Justice Mandisa Maya spoke about as well was about the issue of independence, both individual independence of the judges as well as institutional independence, which speaks to, of course, the issue of funding. A lot of the money that is needed to get the operations of the judiciary going fall and rest within the executive, the Justice Department in particular. And she cited examples of why this is a challenge, and in fact, there's a direct correlation with the denial of citizens' human rights and the ability to administer justice. On Trump-proofing, of course, this speaks to the evolving global landscape and the geopolitics and how President Trump is an example of how he's attacked the international courts of justice, the international criminal courts, and this speaks directly to the rule of law. And the man who wrote an article on that in the Daily Maverick is Matters Mbekezeli Benjamin, where you unpacked exactly what I've just spoken about, that this meeting comes at a time and is an opportunity to reset as judiciaries discuss how, one, they can work better together, but also protect themselves from this attack that's not only taking place against the judiciary, but also all forms of industries, and protect the rule of law.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the current moment globally. Is a moment where judiciaries are under strain. They are suffering all kinds of political attacks. I think the United States is really the most glaring example of the president fully attacking the courts, attacking the judiciary, even going as far as attacking global institutions. And I think that's why the J20 here in South Africa is such a pivotal moment. It's a moment where we can get a global reset. You'll never find 20 of the big countries in the world coming together to discuss common issues. And so this summit presents that opportunity to come up with a collaborative or a united response to these kinds of attacks on the rule of law globally.
I mean, bringing it closer to home, that example that the Chief Justice gave about a man who was shot at the Wynberg court, and there was a lack of visible security, and how that is there's a direct correlation with denying citizens human rights and bringing the courts closer to people. I think that is an important issue around the funding of the courts, and she spoke about how we are edging closer towards the judiciary becoming, not that it's not been independent, but them being fully self-sufficient.
Yes, I think that's an interesting part in the Chief Justice's speech, in that in the earlier part she spoke about the global issues, but she zoomed in quite specifically on South Africa and our history of the institution of the judiciary being run by the executive and what that has meant in terms of the example in Wynberg. But I think she was giving an example to other judiciaries of how the risks that exist when you don't have your own institutional independence, but also the progress that has been made in the sense that there's been an agreement between President Ramaphosa and the judiciary on how the institutional independence will be achieved, which is something I think other judiciaries can learn from, because I think in England the situation is similar. In many countries on the African continent, they're in a similar position, and so it is in a way providing inspiration to those countries of how judicial independence can be achieved and why it's so important, especially in the current political climate.
She also spoke about, in a way, cross-border cooperation, in particular when you speak about digital technologies. One where during COVID there were lots of virtual judgments that were handed down, but also the advent of artificial intelligence, which I think even law firms are contending with. And the example of a lawyer who cited the pressures that they were under. They used, an online tool, Legal Genesis, to actually formulate their papers, but it cited 2 non-existent citations. What risk does that pose?
Well, it is a huge risk to the legal system. You can't have lawyers making up authorities. You can't have a AI system generate fictitious legal cases, because that influences future cases. And what the Chief Justice said is that it pollutes the law. And so that is something that she threw as a caution in drawing again from South African experience to say, this is something that we as judiciaries must respond to. We must think about how AI is beneficial in terms of making our work efficient, making sure that we deal with the backlogs in the courts, but we must be cautious in how AI is deployed. I was hoping to hear more about how it affects fundamental rights, because privacy is a big threat that is caused by AI, and I'm hoping that in the discussions that is something that will come up.
Including cybersecurity as well, and how online documents and the systems of the judiciary are also under threat by cyber hackers. So innovation and technologies, funding of the courts and administering justice, as well as the independence, institutional independence of the judiciary, are but some of the topics that are going to be discussed here, and a lot of exchange of international practice is about to get underway, with the plenaries continuing. Michelle.
Ziyanda, thanks for that. I see now why you were smiling, because I referenced the Trump-proof headline that we were discussing, and that, of course, Mbekezeli Benjamin did pen in the Daily Maverick.